What's up, everyone? It's Weird Man Lan here with you again. Cheeseheadz Weekly, episode number 6. And it is Tuesday, 28th of February. We got all kinds of stuff happening here. All kinds of news to get into. We're not going to get into all of it. Have been getting more followers, continuing to build the show. That is fantastic, and just keep that up. Send in a voice message. That would be great. A topic you'd like to see discussed, or maybe just anything, pretty much. Just comments on last show and just what you want to see. Any kind of feedback is great. Participate in the Q&As and the polls. I'd like to see that as well. And we have been seeing some participation in both of those, so that's awesome. And of course, follow if you haven't already. And you can follow the show on Google Podcasts and iHeart Radio. We're not on Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are Apple lovers, I'm not an Apple person myself, and I did not feel like creating all this Apple stuff that I'm never going to use for anything else. But you never know. Maybe if the show gets big enough, I might be forced to do that. But Google Podcasts, iHeart Radio, and rate the show. But the Q&As and the polls and all this other stuff is on Spotify, and I have the link to send in a voice message in the descriptions of each episode. So before we get into all this news and stuff, I'm going to talk a little bit about Super Bowl parades. This is a little bit late, maybe you're thinking, to be talking about Super Bowl parades. Super Bowl's over, and the off season has officially begun. That is very true. But we're going to talk about Super Bowl parades anyway. So I get that Super Bowl parades. It's great to be able to see your favorite players in public. You know, it's like the only time players actually go out there and celebrate in their town. Uh, just that are even around in the community a whole lot. They actually get to see them kind of outside, off the field, out of the uniforms and everything. I get that's pretty cool. But it is really pretty stupid because you're not seeing football players in that moment, the guys who fought hard to win the game. You're seeing a bunch of drunks walking around, stumbling around, saying bad words. Um, so yeah, while it's a pretty great thing, parents are bringing their kids out to see their heroes. Oh, look, there's Patrick Mahomes. He drinks beer. Lots of beer. At least in the Super Bowl parades, he does. It's not really a great look for the NFL. I realize they don't really care, but I think Super Bowl parades could be a really cool thing. But if there's going to be alcohol involved, why are you bringing them out there? You're just showing everyone oh, you're a great football player, but guess what? You drink beer, and now everyone's kids and everyone who thinks you're the best thing ever, who just idolizes you, is gonna think that's the thing to do because guess what? Patrick Mahomes does it, and he's like the greatest quarterback in the NFL right now. So I think either you cut out the alcohol or else you just cut out the Super Bowl parades altogether, and everything would be great again. It's a great idea. It's just not done in a very great way. So let's get into some news. We have lots of news. First among this, we got the combine, scouting combine for 2023 today. Not a whole lot of actual scouting that goes on at the at the combine. Because these drills, I mean, sure, then you know who's athletic or not, but it's not really a whole that big. I mean, the tape is what you really look at. But what's really great about it is you get to talk to people, you get to hear all these reports, and there's been all kinds of news because, uh, we're hearing the GMs, the coaches talking to the media. So that's always great. Brian Gutekunst, the Packers GM, was one of those people. Talked about Rodgers, Jordan Love, sort of. He got asked about them plenty. He was kind of non-committal. There wasn't a whole lot of contact between him and Rodgers, other than a few texts exchanged. And he continued to praise Love, say he's definitely ready to play. But we pretty much everything's on hold until Rodgers makes his decision. Not a whole lot new there, but more things to speculate about for sure. And to be honest, the whole situation could turn pretty sour. So I guess we'll see what happens. Lots of players were released. Carson Wentz, Marcus Mariota, quarterbacks, former quarterbacks now, Washington Commanders and Atlanta Falcons, respectively. They were released after only one season. And also, Kenny Galladay, Leonard Fournette are going to be released at the start of the new league year. There may have been others too that I did not get. Plenty of players being released. The Commanders also franchise tagged defensive tackle Darren Payne, keeping him off the market, and they're hoping to get a long-term deal done with him, I'm sure. The Rams, according to a report from Tom Pelissero, the Rams are very likely to trade Jalen Ramsey, cornerback for the Los Angeles Rams, all-pro corner, in the coming weeks. Very likely to trade him. The Raiders, there's been some news with them and Rodgers, some buzz. They're not very likely to pursue Rodgers anymore. They're not expected to pursue him. And Josh McDaniels also, when he was talking with the media, said he wants a quarterback that will be in Vegas for a long time. So that doesn't seem to be the type of guy. Rodgers doesn't seem to be the type of guy he'd be looking for. The Raiders are looking for, and so it's not really likely they're going to pursue him. They got other guys they're looking at, and maybe they will try to draft a rookie, which I'm not sure. There's not a whole lot. The class for QBs is not great this year, so they're certainly not going to get a plug-and-play guy right away, I don't think. So it's hard to tell what it's going to look like. Speaking of the draft, though, the Bears are leaning toward moving off of the number one pick in the draft that they have. That's according to Adam Schefter of ESPN. That seems like a good move to me. They don't need a quarterback. Or they're not wanting a quarterback at this point. They could need one, maybe. There's not really a great quarterback, one that can really do any better than Ramsey. Fields, Justin Fields at this point, I don't believe, and I think that's kind of what they're thinking too. So at this point, Fields will remain the starting Q, and they're hoping to just trade down and gain a few more picks. Seems like a good idea. They have lots of holes. If they can get an additional first-round pick or two, that could really help them out, and they can fill a lot more of them holes. The Jets have also been in contact with the Packers about Rodgers. They seem to be the one team that really wants to get Rodgers, and they've also been interested in Derek Carr, who visited them last week, and the visit went well. And the Jets are also opening open to a Geno Smith reunion. He started out his career there and had a was proved to be a very capable starting quarterback for the Seahawks this year. And Jets are like, maybe we can get him back. They're kind of looking for a veteran guy to hopefully help mentor Zach Wilson. And they also think Zach Wilson still has a high ceiling, but as you might have noticed, he obviously is not ready to play yet, and he might not ever be. So they're looking for a vet guy to bring in, and obviously it looks like they're trying to pursue Rodgers, but they have a few backup options that they can pursue, free agents, if they can't get Rodgers. Uh, Davis Webb, if some of you Eagles fans might remember him, he subbed in for Daniel Jones that last regular season. I'm not sure if it was week 18. I believe it was week 18. Davis Webb was in. The Giants had clinched playoffs, so they didn't want to get Daniel Jones injured. And he was the backup quarterback for the New York Giants last year. He's not anymore. He decided to switch straight over to coaching, something you don't see very often. And he's going to become Russell Wilson's new quarterback coach in Denver, under Sean Payton, their Broncos' new head coach. That could be interesting considering Davis Webb is actually younger than Russell Wilson, but he's going to be coaching him. So we'll see how that works out. Davis Webb apparently has always been kind of that kind of guy, smart coach type guy, but he is younger than Russell Wilson, so kind of an interesting hire. In other Packers news, only Jair Alexander and Aaron Jones were the only two Packers to make PFF's top 101 players list. So, in case that gives you any insight into the Packers' rather dismal 2022 season. So, now I'm going to do a free agency sort of preview for the Packers, talking about Packers players in the future. In a future episode, I will then discuss maybe trade targets and guys they could consider picking up off the free agent market. But for today, I'm just going to discuss kind of what I think the Packers should do with some players, what I think they will do with some of these players who will be free agents, as free agency is coming up March 15th. And that is also when Rodgers will probably make his decision by then, and if not, a little bit before. So so that's kind of a big time for the Packers because you figure out the quarterback situation then, and also you're trying to clear cap space to re-sign some of these guys or sign some new guys. So whatever it may be for the Packers. So I'll just go over each player and then kind of dive in to each one just briefly. Safety, Adrian Amos, his contract will void. He kind of regressed a little bit this year. One of the veteran players that just weren't quite as good, and didn't quite show as much as we thought they were going to in this supposedly great Packers defense on paper. I don't think he's getting older. I don't think the Packers will re-sign him. I don't think they really should re-sign him. I think they should go to the draft and try to kind of revamp the position. Maybe sign another veteran in free agency. That would definitely be great. But I don't see them trying to re-sign Amos. And he will probably still demand a fair bit of money as well. We also got Allen Lazard here. He's an unrestricted free agent for the first time in his career. And so now the Packers have a big decision to make here. I don't know. Lazard is a complementary player. He's an all-around player. He can do it all. He can block. But is he's not he's a veteran, good veteran guy. He's going to cost too much for the Packers. I don't think they should re-sign him for the amount of money he's going to demand, probably in the open market. I think it sounds like the Packers are just going to kind of let him test the open market. If they can somehow get him cheap, that'd be great, but I think Alan Lazard is kind of eager to see how much money he can make at this point in his career after not making a whole lot with the Packers, being an undrafted free agent and everything. So I don't think they should resign him. I don't think they will resign him either. We also got defensive lineman Jaron Reed. His contract will void. They brought him over from the Chiefs on a 1-year deal, and he was pretty disruptive, especially later on in the season. He kind of caught fire. I think it would be good for the Packers if they could bring him back. If he doesn't cost too much, I think they should bring him back on another 1 to 2 year deal. Um, he was disruptive. They can use veterans on that line. He can help Devontae Wyatt continue to grow along with Kenny Clark and kind of round out that D line well. And then you add another player in the draft or something, and that line is pretty well beefed up. We also that was also a position that was a little bit underwhelming, but overall I think they're a pretty solid group. We might have considered them to do a little bit better. I personally thought Wyatt would have more of an impact. So next year, if Devontae Wyatt gets more playing time, we could see some of his abilities shining through. But I think Reed would be a good guy to sign. I'm not sure if they will sign him or not. This one's kind of tough to predict. I don't really know how much money he'll command on the open market. Probably a fair amount. So I'm not really sure what they will do with him. Dean Lowry, also D lineman, he kind of slacked off this year, and he's not much more than a run defender, and it seems like he's not that great of a run defender all the time either. And he, again, is getting older. His contract will void after the season. I think they need to let him go. He's been a cut candidate over the past 2 seasons, and they've kept him on. He's a good veteran presence, but I think it's time to move on from him. We got Mercedes Lewis. His contract will void off the 2-year deal. Packers keep re-signing him. He's on 1-year deal, 1-year deal, 2-year deal. I don't think this would be a bad re-signing. They can get him for cheap. If he still wants to play football, I'd say they may as well just re-sign him. They can probably get him on a vet's minimum deal. And he's a great run blocker, and the tight end group needs some help. And so if they're drafting young guys, he can kind of be a mentor to them. He's great for the locker room. So I think that's a great guy to have around. And I think the Packers will look to re-sign him if he is available and is wanting to play again next year. Kicker Mason Crosby, his contract will void. He's getting older. We saw a noticeable weakness in his leg. He was not kicking as long field goals, but he was still very good at the intermediate range, shorter range, 50 and above. He struggles to boot it that far, especially in the cold in Green Bay. If he wants to play football and they can get him really cheap, I'd say maybe, just because they need to, because I don't know if they're gonna draft a kicker. Kicker. It's a big position. I think Ramiz Ahmed. Maybe they should give him a shot. I've had him on their practice squad. He has been signed to a futures deal. I think maybe they should give him a shot. He did well in the preseason. Has a big leg. I'm guessing they won't re-sign him, at least if they feel good about Ahmed and other options in the draft or free agency. Kind of depends, but you never know, he could retire as well. So we'll see what happens there. But he is also a great locker room guy, a great guy to have around. So they might welcome him back if they can get him cheap enough, which they probably could. Randall Cobb, his contract will void. I don't. Kind of depends on if Rodgers is back or not, I guess, for this one. And I really don't think they should bring him back. I love Randall Cobb as a Green Bay fan, but I don't think they're gonna. He didn't contribute really that much. He definitely is getting older, and it's showing. And if Rodgers is back, he's gonna want Cobb back too. But I think if they transitions for Rodgers, he's not gonna be back, and he's a great guy to have around. I love Cobb, but he's just not he doesn't have much juice anymore. Tight end Robert Tonyan, void again. Result of all this money being pushed forward. If they can get him for cheap, maybe. I'd say no. I'd say they probably shouldn't unless they can get him cheap, and they probably won't unless they can get him cheap. He's never really been the same after the ACL injury, after the big year, and he was starting to catch fire again. Then he had the ACL, and came back, and he's not really been the same last year and this past year, and he's still pretty young, I believe, but an undrafted guy. I don't. Yeah, he's great for the locker room. Rodgers, of course, wants him back. Another one of those veteran guys, but he's great at catching the ball, but did not catch the ball very much. Didn't get many balls thrown his way, so. And he's not that great at run blocking either, so I'm not sure he'll be back. The big one is cornerback slash kick returner Keyshawn Nixon. He'll be an unrestricted free agent. The Packers, I think, will and must do anything and everything they can to bring this guy back. He's the big guy that they really need to work to bring back here, because he held his own as a slot corner. He wasn't that bad as a slot guy, so he provides depth in the as a corner. And then we all saw what he did as a kick returner, best one in the league last year. So he needs to come back. Linebacker Ty Summers. I believe they actually released him, so he will not be coming back. And then we have Josh Nijman is a restricted free agent. Chris Barnes, Juwan Winfrey, Tyler Davis, Jake Hansen. Some of them, I don't know. Josh Nijman, I'm pretty sure will be back. Maybe Juwan Winfrey, maybe Tyler Davis. Tyler Davis, they're pretty high on, so they probably will try to bring him back. Just give some more depth in the tight end room as well, which they need at this point. Chris Barnes, probably not. They got Isaiah McDuffie as the guy behind. Pretty good depth option behind Quay Walker and Devontae Campbell. So they don't really need him at this point. And there's a whole slew of exclusive rights people. They'll sign the ones that they think are worth it for next year, and the ones that aren't, they won't sign. So there's my take on those. I will not go through all those because we are running out of time. So thanks for listening to another episode. Next time we have a big show coming up. We're going to discuss Rodgers again, and we'll see what happens there as we await his decision. Pretty much the Packers do, that's pretty much, they got to figure that out, his decision, and then they can kind of cut loose, figure out what their team plan. That's pretty much when the real off season begins in Green Bay, after Rodgers makes his decision. So participate, the Q&A, the polls, follow the show, rate the show, all that stuff. Send in a voice message. haven't got any of those yet, and if you want, I can even play it on the show. So that might be a good idea if you want someone to hear your voice. There you go. And if you have a great take you want to give me, you want me to address, that'd be great. And I guess we will see you next week with another episode of the pod. And I will talk to you later. Goodbye.